Hi everyone, it's Shannon and welcome to today's video. So I am back with another holiday face palette, and this one I'm actually really excited about because I have gotten the last two I don't know if it was a holiday palette, but definitely gotten several of the NARS holiday palettes and the face palettes. Now, it didn't seem like they have an eyeshadow palette this year, at least not initially. Maybe they'll come out with one later on. But I did get last year's, their blush palette. I did end up decluttering it because, well, I really liked it. It wasn't something that I was going to use enough, and I ended up decluttering it. But I do have the Foreplay, which I do use and I talk about, that I really love, and that was the reason why I kind of decluttered that other one. And then this year they came out with a new one. It is part of the 24 Karat Collection. I think it's called Golden Indulgence is what they're referring it to as. They have a bunch of different products in this holiday collection, but they have two different face palettes this year, and that's one of the reasons why I was kind of excited, because they've usually only had one, and that was the issue with last year's palette, was there was like light shades and dark shades, and there really wasn't going to, I wasn't going to be able to use enough of the shades to make it worth keeping. So this year they have a palette 1 and a palette 2. So there is a light to medium one, which is palette 1, which is the one I got. I did not get both. And then there is a palette 2. So I'm very excited about this palette. I received it. It's actually even prettier in person. All the shades are brand new, and we're going to try it on today. Okay, so this is called the Pure Luxury Light Reflecting Cheek and Eye Palette, and I have one. So there's 1 and 2. I have one which is for light and medium. Now I have already done my swatches. Now look at this packaging. It's really pretty. It kind of reminds me of the, I think it's the Golden palette for Natasha Denona, but it's really pretty. Sometimes the flat, I like it when it's flat just because it's easier to store, but this isn't too bad. And I did already do my swatches, so it is, I've already swatched it, but I have not tried it on. But you have a highlighter, a bronzer, and then 3 blushes, but it's meant that you can use them on your eye too. So it's not just a face palette, it can also be used on the eye. And then the palette 2, I'll just insert a picture here. It is definitely quite a bit darker. So on their website, it says, swipe on a stroke of luxe with palettes designed to make you look and feel your most luxurious, featuring limited edition sculptural gold compacts. Prepare for the party circuit with irresistible, silky, light reflecting powders, which impart a natural, luminous wash of color across eyes and cheeks. Pearlescent pigments and polymers create a light scattering effect for a radiant, soft focus look with 8-hour wear, featuring assortment of powders for highlighting, sculpting, and blushing for next level luminosity that lasts all night long. So let's go ahead and get into the shades. So here we have, again, palette 1, and we have Bombshell, which is an opalescent pink pearl, Blonde Crazy, which is a soft natural brown, Red Dust, which is a Dolly pink, Rough Cut, a candy coral, and then Pandora's Box, which is a soft dusty rose. And here I'm going to insert a picture of the palette 2, just so you can see those colors. This is Showtime, a soft bronze apricot, that's the highlight, Tinseltown, a terracotta red brown, Hold Your Man, an acai berry purple, Smash Hit burnished orange, and then Lavish, which is a dirty rose mauve. So I really like that they're 2 palettes. These are $60, and the reason why I was really excited about these is because they have a highlighter, a bronzer, and then 3 blushes. So that's, I think these are a alternative to the Hourglass palettes. The Hourglass palettes are gorgeous. They're known for, you know, and a lot of people don't like the finishing powders. I've also learned a lot of people do like the finishing powders. So if you are one of those people that likes the finishing powders, this palette is probably not for you. But if you are one that kind of just like the finishing powder is there, you use it because it's there, but it's not something you purchase the palette for, this is a 2/3 of the price. So this is $60 and those are $90. So I think this is a good alternative. So I did do swatch comparisons. All my swatches will be at the end of the video, so I'll put timestamps below. You can kind of skip through it. But I did compare it. I did swatches to, I compared it to the Foreplay that I just showed you. And then I also compared it to the Hourglass Dragon and the Hourglass Evil Eye from this year. So if you are interested in purchasing one palette, one face palette, all 3 of those are available. The Foreplay was a limited edition, but it's still available and it's on sale. But you can kind of compare and see which one works for you. Okay, now before we get started with the palette, I did want to mention that I am wearing a NARS lip pigment. So this is the Power Matte lip pigment. It is the shade Le Freak, which is a pale pink nude. So it's a liquid lipstick essentially. So somebody usually will ask me what my lipstick is and I always forget. So I did try to use a NARS. I actually got this, it's $30, but I got this in the Sephora semi-annual sale last couple months ago, and it was like 15. So it's a really pretty color. I really like it. Very comfortable, but very, very dry. So if you don't like a very, very matte drying, then you don't like it, you're not gonna like it. However, I can put like lip gloss on it too. So anyway, here is the palette. I did do swatches in Natural Light, but I will show those at the end. But let me go ahead and do some swatches just live on camera so you can see how it swatches live on camera. Okay, so first up is the highlighter, and this is Bombshell, which is an opalescent pink pearl. And then this is the bronzer, which is Blonde Crazy, a soft natural blonde. When you see the comparisons in a little bit, this one is definitely more of an orangey, you know, bronze warm bronzer than the ones in the Hourglass palettes this year. The Hourglass palettes are definitely more neutral this year, so this one has definitely more of an orangey tone. So if you are one of those people that want both and you're like, do they compare? This one is definitely different. And then here are the three blushes. This is Red Dust, which is a Dolly Pink, Rough Cut, a Candy Coral, and Pandora's Box, a Dusty Rose. So right off the bat, one of the things I will say is this is what, as far as the blushes are concerned, this is what I wanted Hourglass to be, specifically the Evil Eye. The Evil Eye has, I really love the palette. I think it's gorgeous, but the pink and the coral are so close to the point when I did that video, I actually put one on each cheek and I meant to blend it out, but my son had, you know, his ninja class and I had to take him and I left it and no one noticed. And I even came back and my husband's like, oh, your makeup looks good. I'm like, what do you think of my blush? And he goes, oh, I like it. I'm like, do you see any difference? And he's like, no. And he didn't even notice that I was wearing two different color blushes. So I could tell, but it was very subtle and he didn't notice. So that's the point. But I like that these are three very different you know, shades of blushes, and also the darker medium to dark palette too does seem to go deeper. Again, I didn't get it, but in the pictures it does seem to be a deeper in tone. So I think it's probably more inclusive. I did hear that this year's Lotus Flower, it appears in pictures and in the palette to be darker than what it really is. So I can't really say, you know, I know it's too dark for me. That's all I can tell you. Okay, so just like I did with the Evil Eye palette that had three blushes, I am going to try one of the blushes on first and put it on one side and then take it off so that I can do the other side so I can try on actually all three blushes. I am just going to go in order. The Dolly Pink. The Dolly Pink seems to be the most luminescent and has the most shimmer. So they're all pretty much different. But I think if I look at the swatches, these two look to be the closest, just because they have the same amount of shimmer, where this one has a lot more shimmer. So anyway, let's go ahead. I have three different blush brushes. These are all Sigma. These are all the F10s. Everybody always asks me. So I have three. So I have three different ones. I'm going to use the black one for the first shade. Again, this is the Red Dust, which is a Dolly Pink. So I don't know why it's called Red Dust. I thought that was kind of interesting, but we'll just place it on this cheek. And I did swatch it again, so I do have that foreplay, so I was able to compare it to the Orgasm blush, because I do think it looks to be similar, but it's not as similar as you might think, because this one is definitely more pink, whereas Orgasm is more peachy pink. So this one is a nice, really, it looks to be like a cool tone pink, really pretty, builds up nicely. I'm not a big cool pink type of blush. If I do like a pink, I tend to like a warm pink. So this is something I like. I would definitely wear, because if I'm wearing like a cool tone eyeshadow, I want a cool tone blush, but I tend to gravitate more towards warm tones. But I think it's a really pretty, nice, subtle pink. Okay, so I'm back. I took it off and then just reapplied my foundation. I'm wearing the new One Size foundation, which I am loving. So watch that video if you haven't. It's literally a game changer foundation. So I'm gonna go in now with the next shade, which is Rough Cut. This is the Candy Coral. This is probably my favorite shade of the palette. So very excited about this one. And I mean, I think I like all three shades and I would use all three shades because again, they're very different. So, but this is the Candy Coral. And it's kind of like, yeah, it's a coral peachy type shade. Okay, so here is the Candy Coral. It's very, I would say not sheer, but it's very, like it's buildable, but it's not, you know, I would say it's not that it's not pigmented, but it's not extremely pigmented. So it's easy to build, but you kind of got to get in there, but really pretty. Just, I think it's a gorgeous color. So that is the, not the Candy Coral, that's Rough Cut, which is described as a Candy Coral. Okay, and on this cheek, I'm gonna go in with Pandora's Box, which is described as the Soft Dusty Rose. And again, this is a really pretty, and this is what I wanted in the Evil Eye, you know, instead of like the, you know, having like the coral or the pink, I think having that cool pink, and then instead of having the coral because they had the peach, doing like a mauve type shade. So this one is gorgeous. Again, this is like a dusty rose, kind of like a mauve. So definitely a difference between all three blushes, which I love. And here you have it. This is Pandora's Box. So you can see between these two, there's definitely a difference. This is definitely the darkest, I think, between the three, but they're all three very buildable. This one I think is a little bit probably the most matte. There's kind of different levels of shimmer between all three. This one has the least amount, but it still has a little bit. But again, this is the Rough Cut, and this is Pandora's Box. Okay, now we're gonna get into the bronzer. And the bronzer, I wasn't sure when I was reading the palette and when I was looking on stuff on the website if this was a bronzer or not, because it didn't say it was a bronzer. It said like it was a face palette, it can be used on the cheek and the eye, but it didn't say bronzer. So when I got it, I thought it was a bronzer, but I wasn't completely sure. Now I did declutter. I only had a mini Laguna bronzer, and I almost picked it up a regular size in the Sephora sale, but then I had to be honest with myself that I really don't need another bronzer because I usually reach for the ones in my face palettes. So I didn't get it. So I can't compare this to the Laguna bronzer because I just don't have it anymore. So you'll see some comparisons to some other bronzers in a little bit, but again, this one it's described as a soft natural brown, but I will say it has like that, I won't say orangey undertone, but like that reddish undertone. It's definitely a warm like bronzer. And I'm also gonna put it on the eye as well so you can see how it looks. And I'm trying to put it a little bit heavy just so that you can really see how it looks. I think it's really pretty, and the way that I like the color. So I really like it, and the fact that this year's Hourglass are neutral. So if I decided to keep both, I think it's gonna give me different type of bronzers. So that's the bronzer on the face. Now let me go ahead with the and put it on as an eyeshadow as well, and we'll put on the highlighter as on the eye as well, but it looks really pretty as an eyeshadow. So I love doing, especially like with this face palette, you can easily make it you know, a one and done palette, and this one I think you can absolutely do it. You could go on vacation with this, and this could be, I mean, you would have very simple looks, but this could be the only palette you brought because again, there's these three different types of blushes, but the bronzer I think looks really pretty. So there you can see it as an eyeshadow, really pretty as well. Okay, next up is going to be the highlighter, and this is described as an opalescent pink pearl. Whoops, and I almost dropped it there. And it's really pretty. And one of the things I do like about it, because the Foreplay one is almost a little too deep, I have to go very light-handed. This one is definitely lighter, and it's also, oh, that's really pretty. I just have to go light-handed with that one. So this one is just really pretty. And then also the pink, it's very different than the Evil Eye. So if you have Evil Eye and you're thinking about, you know, picking this up as an addition, don't think it, the two, they're definitely different types of pinks. That one is more of a rose gold, where this one is kind of just a true kind of pinky highlighter. So that is it as a highlighter. And what I'm going to do now is get it as on, if you hear screaming, that's my son, I'm sorry. And I'm going to put it on the lid as an eyeshadow, and just, you can see here, really, really pretty. You know, I'll definitely put it on the brow bone as well. And you can see, really nice. So just a gorgeous highlighter, really pretty. I know I keep saying that, I repeat myself, but I mean, just gorgeous. Okay, so here is the final look. Again, you know, this is the coral shade, and this is the like dusty rose shade, but the eyes are the same. Think the bronzer is gorgeous. Again, if you don't like an orangey or like a reddish tone, warm tone bronzer, then this is not going to be for you. But I think that the, you know, warm bronzer, the warm, and that's a shade also that I think can even be worn as a blush, which I think is good too. So I sometimes wear bronzer as a blush as well. So I really like it. Now let's get into the swatches. Now these were all done earlier today in the sunlight, in natural light. Now it was raining when I was doing this, so it was kind of cloudy and overcast, but I tried to get it in natural light. So first up, here are just the swatches of the palette in natural light. From left to right, you have Bombshell, Blonde Crazy, which is the bronzer, then the 3 blushes, Red Dust, Rough Cut, and Pandora's Box. So you can see there the 3 different type of blushes, how they're definitely very different, and how the Red Dust is more shimmery than the other 2. The next swatch picture is comparison to the Orgasm Foreplay palette. This is just the one that doesn't have a bronzer, so I didn't compare the bronzer. But the first highlighter is going to be Bombshell. That is the one from the Pure Luxury palette. And then the second one is the shade Swinger, which is from the Foreplay palette. Then the 3 blushes, the first 3 blushes are the 3 blushes in the Pure Luxury palette. So you'll see that bright pink, the coral, and then the dusty rose. Then you have the 3 orgasm shades. So you have the original Orgasm, Orgasm X, and then Orgasm Rush. So you can see there's not really a comparison between these 3 blushes. And there is a big difference between Orgasm Rush and the Pandora's Box. So if you have the Foreplay palette, this is going to be very, very different. Next up, this is comparing it to the Hourglass Dragon palette. So again, I just did the first shade is going to be the Pure Luxury, the NARS. The second shade is going to be the one from Hourglass. So the first highlighter is the Bombshell. You can see that's pink. The one from Hourglass was definitely more champagne. Then you see the 2 bronzers, and this is what I was talking about, where the NARS one is definitely more red, more warm, where the one in Hourglass is more neutral. So that's the 2 comparisons of the bronzers. Then again, you have the 3 blushes from the NARS palette, and then the 2 blushes, because remember, Dragon only had 2 blushes because it has the 2 finishing powders. So it has the 2 blushes, and they're significantly different. So you have a peach, and I think it's like a dusty rose as well, but it's much paler. So they're very different. So if you wanted to pick up both, you could, but if you thought that those 2 blushes were too pale and you're considering this one, this could be an alternative. And then finally, we have it with Evil Eye. So you'll see the 2 highlighters. And you'll see that even though they both have the pink, the one from NARS is definitely pinkier and more cool tone, whereas the one from the Hourglass Evil Eye is rose gold. The bronzers, again, the one from NARS is more warm, more reddish tone, whereas the one from Hourglass Evil Eye is more neutral. Then you have the 3 blushes from NARS. So you have the pink, the coral, and the dusty rose. And then you have the 3 blushes from Evil Eye. And you'll see it's like the first one is the pink, the middle one is the peachy shade, and then the last one is the coral. The pink and the coral were so close. And now they're different from the ones in this palette, but they're still very close. I think the 2 pinks are fairly close, but the one from NARS is more shimmy, is more shimmer, and is also more cool tone. So those are my swatch comparisons in natural light for those palettes. And I just included palettes that are still currently on sale because I think, again, this is a palette that is an alternative. Like if you don't want to spend $90 and you want to spend $60, or maybe even wait for it to be on sale, because most likely it will eventually go on sale, then you can do that and save your money and not get the Hourglass, because I think this is a really good alternative. Okay, so wrapping up my first impression and final thoughts, I think this is gorgeous. I have been a big fan. I know that NARS kind of gets, you know, a bad rep, and it has, like, a lot of people, it's repetitive, and it kind of is, but these are all brand new shades, and, you know, so is Hourglass, let's be honest. But I think this is gorgeous. And if you were looking at the Hourglass but just couldn't pull the trigger on the $90 price tag, then I think this is a good alternative. Now, I will say, sometimes they have sales. I looked and I tried to remember if this is, it's right now only available on NARS website, so narscosmetics.com. I could not find if it was ever available on Sephora or Ulta, but right now that particular palette is still available from last year. It's limited edition, but it is still available. And the Foreplay one is still available. I think this one is like $34. So if you are looking at this, it will probably eventually go on sale. Like, you don't have to get it right now. The Hourglass sometimes usually, I will say usually sell out before any type of sale. Maybe they make it to the Sephora sale, but I don't get 20%. I think the most I've ever gotten is 15%. So I think this is a great alternative. Again, it's $60. And then if you wait for, you know, a sale, then you could probably even get it even cheaper, you know, 20% off. But I think it's gorgeous. You've got, and again, if you don't want the finishing powders, if you like the finishing powders in the Hourglass, then get the Hourglass, like splurge for that. But I think this is gorgeous. I love that they did 3 different type of blushes. These are all, you know, brand new shades. Everything that we've kind of asked from Hourglass, they brought it here. So I think it's gorgeous. I do wish the highlighter was smaller. You know, I just, like, I don't use that much highlighter, so I use more blush, but I understand for the asymmetry of the palette, that's the reason why they do it. So that's probably my only critique, but I think it is gorgeous. So with that, if you like this video, click like, click and subscribe. That way you get a notification every time I post a new video. Bye everyone.